the next speaker, Mr. Dobrica Savic, from the International Atomic Energy Agency. And now we must listen very carefully to this presentation because it will be about the future of us, of the grey literature professionals, and we are very interested in this topic. So the place is yours.
Good morning, everyone. It's my great pleasure to be here with you today and to present and talk about digital transformation and grey literature professionals. Anna had a preview, so she knows that I'll be talking slightly about the future and generally speaking about the impact of the digital transformation in general and particularly on the grey literature professionals. A fair question that every one of us can ask today is, yeah, this is the topic that everybody talks about. This is something that we all know about. So what? We went through a number of different transformations to different revolutions. The revolutions and the quotation marks. We talked about the age of computers, the age of internet. We went through a period when we were talking about knowledge management. We were talking about knowledge economy. And everyone nowadays is talking about digital transformation. So what is so special about it? When I look at this, the fact which really brings to our attention the gravity of this actual concept and whatever is happening around us is that according to OECD Employment Outlook 2019, around 50% of our jobs will go through some kind of transformation. In other words, if you look around you, every second person within the next few years will go, the job of that person will have to go through some kind of transformation. And that is the fact which in fact has to raise the awareness and attention of all of us to this specific phenomenon which is going right now. So the second question you can ask is, so what now? And this is what I will try to reply in, or offer some hints in this particular presentation. I will quickly go through the general concept, the digital transformation, the grey literature and grey literature professionals, and then we'll go into more specific things which are the nature of grey literature work, the workforce, workplace, and the role of leadership. When we are talking about the digital transformation, we are probably talking about a new way of creating business models by using modern IT technology. It's by leveraging existing knowledge and profoundly changing the essence of the organization. And we were talking about the essence of organization, we are talking about its culture, the management strategy, the technological mix, the operational setup. We are pursuing, in fact, new revenue streams, products, and services. And that's probably the most important part of the whole definition. If you're talking about the characteristics, this is one of those movements that is very much customer-centric. It's the approach that places the customer in the center of all decisions, all services, and all activities. I don't have to mention the appearance of the new technologies like AI, machine learning, cloud computing, analytics, chatbots, and so on. And these are the technologies that digital transformation heavily relies on and tries to use to improve all these items mentioned before and bring the benefits which are streamlining processes, customer satisfaction, of course profitability is always there, and new business opportunities. I'm not going to go through this definition, although this definition was created here a few years back, because I believe that everyone here in this room knows about what is the grey literature itself. Now comes an interesting part. It's the part where we are talking about the professionals. I started with two fairly common definitions of professionals in general. So those are the person formally certified by a professional body of belonging to a specific profession by virtue of having completed the required course. And I'm putting this in bold there for you just to think about it and put it in connection to the GL of studies and practice, and whose competence can usually be measured against the established set of standards. And we had a previous speaker who was talking about lack of standards. Person who has achieved an acclaimed level of proficiency in a calling or in a trade. In other words, a calling requires specialized knowledge and often long and intensive academic preparation. If we transfer this to the world of GL, or GL professionals, we can say, okay, fine, we need completed study of certification, we need established standards, specialized knowledge and skills, work competency, and of course, maintenance and development of professional expertise. As you can see, there is a problem there because many of these categories, if not all of them, GL work and GL professionals in fact lack. Preparing for this presentation, I was, and it was in June probably, I was looking at, is really GL professional something that the world is looking for? So I took the 10 most popular search engines in English, and they're listed on the left side, and the number there indicates, in fact, how many times they mention gray literature in any contents, in the vacancies, titles, job descriptions, whatever. So this is what came out. As you can see, very few. We are talking about hundreds of thousands of job descriptions, vacancies announcement, and so on, and there are very few times that they anywhere mention it. So I went a little bit deeper and said, okay, fine, let's see what kind of positions are there. The positions which did mention, in fact, are very few. There are analysts, researchers, of course, librarians, consultants, and, to my surprise, linguists. If we are looking at the actual industries where the gray literature profession or contents was required, it was health, research, university, and again, to my surprise, intelligence. And I'm talking about intelligence services. If you're looking at the roles which were in those job descriptions, which I went through, required from those individuals, there were the following: to identify, collect, or interpret, to critically evaluate, which I liked very much, to search for, to review, to experience locating resources, in other words, finding the resources available, create records, knowledge of GL, which was probably one of the most used ones, so just to know there is something called GL, and to translate. Now, if we are to look at this, there are two main things which are in the job description. It's search and processing, right? Now, the problem with that one is that the same World Economic Forum report on jobs in 2018, without having in mind all this, said that by 2022, augmentation of existing jobs through technology may free up workers from the majority of, and they list exactly those two categories. Interesting, right? Okay, so when we're looking at the digital transformation and its impact, we can go through different approaches or different ways of viewing it. I was looking at what, why, who, and how. In other words, what is the nature of GL work? Why? The role of leadership, in other words, deciding why are we doing this? Who is doing the workforce? And of course, how is the work being done or work being organized? If we are looking for the impact of the nature of GL work, there are these, I would now really call them well-known, almost famous 5 V's. And these are the variety, the volume, the veracity, velocity, and value. And every single asset of information could probably be evaluated through these 5 elements. I'm not going to go through this because most of you probably are aware of that, and there is a time limitation. I can see there is a red 5 minutes already waiting for me to go up. Generally speaking, the variety for the GreyNet website, which lists 150 document types specific to GL, including data. There are multiple new resources coming. I'm just listing some of them. There will be probably hundreds of new types, which brings the problem of the Grey literature and the Grey literature professionals. And of course, there are billions of connected devices creating specific, very, very specific technology-oriented formats. If you are talking about volume, there are 38 zettabytes of data today, and 90% of all data in the world has been generated over the last 2 years. So if you look forward, I mean, you can probably conclude, how much data will be there, and what will be the role of if 150 or maybe 250 different formats are there, what will happen with this. 2.5 exabytes of data are produced every day, which is equivalent to 250,000 libraries of Congress. Now, we have to be realistic, what the Grey literature professional can really do in that. And there are some other examples here that you will probably be able to see in the article which is going to be published. If you are talking about veracity, of course, we have fake news today, which is very popular. We have spam emails, computer bots, and so on. And all these things need to be taken into consideration when we are talking about the Grey literature. And the skills that the Grey literature professionals should have. Velocity currently takes 13 minutes to download the content of a single DVD and over a DSL line. It's assumed that it has been tested already in a number of countries. That 5G-enabled smartphone or laptop could do that just in 4 seconds. So you can imagine how much the incentive will be there, in fact, to increase the number of downloads, the number of creations, changes, copies, BCCs, and whatever is there. The value, it's already mentioned at the previous presentation that the Grey literature is finding its way to a value chain, and from something freely available, it slowly brings the value, in fact, being commercialized. In other words, there is a change of the originally intended purpose of information and data. When we are talking about the impact on the workforce, digital transformation is more than just a technology implementation. Every single article that you will read, they will tell you it is not about technology, it's about people. The digital workforce mindset must be adopted first. Here is a definition of the digital mindset, where understanding of the power of technology to democratize, scale, and speed up every form of interaction and action. And then you have some of the main characteristics, including the growth, agility, comfort with ambiguity, explorer's mind, and so on. All of these characteristics are, in fact, very, very difficult to, they're very easy to put on a piece of paper, but to implement in real life, they're really difficult. To generalize, we can say that we have the digital literacy, which will be, together with the technological knowledge, one of the main characteristics that any GL professional will have to have. It will turn into a lifelong, and they also call it micro-learning and personal development. Micro-learning meaning that you will need something to know for the next week or maybe even for tomorrow, which is very, very specific, but it's miniature, and you have to find out and do it probably yourself. There are many companies nowadays that, in fact, instead of training courses internally, they offer you, okay, fine, here is the online course, so and so, and just go ahead and enroll and do it whenever you find time. We will have to increase the engagement of the professionals. There is a mobile force in the remote work, which is almost widespread around the world nowadays. You have American companies that have people working in Czech Republic, in Slovakia, in India, and everywhere else, and vice versa too. So this is something which is changing the world of Grey literature managers and Grey literature professionals and their responsibilities. Of course, there is a famous thing about the generation gap. anyone who still has a watch probably is regarded as old type or old generation, because new generation doesn't care about watches anymore. They probably just have their cell phones with them. Digitally born documentation is something which is also related to a generation gap. We also have I can share, in fact, one very interesting thing about this, how the cultural differences. I was just this year, in fact, in Shanghai doing a presentation there, and it was in the nuclear. I come from the nuclear industry. It was in one of the biggest, largest Chinese nuclear power plants. There was a number of engineers around, and I was starting talking about generation gap and the problems with aging force and so on. And they were looking at me and saying, "We don't understand." And it wasn't the problem of English; it was the problem of because they don't have that. They're engineers all probably 30, 40 years maximum. So these are the things which we have to also look from the global perspective. Although in our part of the world, yes, this is one of the issues. Of course, digital ethics, which everyone is talking nowadays about trying to come up with some solution for that. I like that the last one here from Dell Technologies, when they say that 85% of the jobs in 10 years, in fact, don't exist now. Just think about it. Most of you will be working for another 10, 20, 30 years, but the jobs that will be offered, in fact, are not there. We do have the impact on the workplace, and that's an interesting one because technology advances always outpace, in fact, the workplace structures. So we have new tools, we have digital dexterity, we have digital culture which needs to be implemented in the workplace. We have removal of information silos, which is extremely difficult in any big organization. We have agile, fluid, and flexible things, which are the requirements. And we also heard in previous presentation that, yes, they have the agile team, which is 20 people, if required, or maybe just 2 or 3 who are leading the business. This is something which is the tendency around the world nowadays. And of course, the remote work. When we are talking about impact on the role of leadership, digital transformation needs leaders, and it's a people issue, not a technology one. And when we are talking about leadership, it's not the management. It is the art of influencing others to do their work with the best possible performance. And the goal, and you can see here that we have to have forward thinkers. We need people who are leading with customers in mind. We need open communication. We need partnerships, collaboration. We need a data-driven decision making. We need people who are agile, risk takers, tech savvy, and employment empowerment, talent empowerment, and so on. There are many of those characteristics, in fact, which are required from modern managers and especially of the new leaders. When we are looking at the impact on the role of G professionals, item by item, you can see that, for example, search and identify can easily be probably replaced by cognitive search, evaluation, and those are the things that I mentioned at the beginning as some of the characteristics what we are doing. Evaluate and review, probably AI algorithms can easily replace that. Collect and process, we are talking about harvesting, metadata standards. Share and promote, which is open access repository, which we are all working towards. And of course, to maintain, preserve, and dispose, we do need good policies. In short, in conclusion, there is an increased dependency on IT tools and impact on all industries and types of work, including information and gray literature management. We have a changed nature of gray literature, which is because of increase of GL types, the volume, speed of creation, while maintaining trustworthiness and value of information, which are the main requirements. We have also new GL requirements, which are impact on the workforce, the role of leadership, and the complexity of the new workplace. Strengthening of GL profession, we probably don't have to talk too much about it because there is not much nowadays available in the sense of training, acquisition of new skills, certification, standardization is missing, cooperation with relating disciplines. IT or any other one is also lacking. And of course, how many professional associations we have. So if you are looking to the future of GL profession, these are the areas which need to be drastically changed in order to provide sustainability of this profession. Finally, I'd just like to mention that we are all impressed by digital transformation. There are, within the next 2 years, around $2 trillion US dollars will be put into the digital transformation. But please keep in mind that less 1/3 digital transformation projects are successful. Coming here last night, I was reading an article from Canada where they say it was regarding to retail industry, and statistics there were really, really scary. Here I'm quoting their 1/3. They say that only 3% of digital transformation retail projects were ever successful. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you. I love listening to Dobe and his thought-provoking communications. I wonder if what you describe as future of professionals, if it's not the kind of merger with profiles like data officer or data scientist, what you describe.
It's an interesting question. Thank you, Joachim, for that. If I may make a comment, both of us remember old times when the records manager and archives were the most powerful professions of this nature in any organization. They disappeared completely. We had mentioned there already that librarians have been changed with knowledge managers. If you look at the literature, look at the organization, that one is disappearing too. Because the trend nowadays is to have data managers, because everything is data, right? You might have noticed a slight switch, that people are not talking anymore about big data. That's kind of dropped. Why? Because data is data, and data is always big. So they're not really talking about that, but data stays there, data managers are there. Going back to the reality of especially the industry, I see your point, and I agree 100% with that, that most likely, if this so-called GL profession does not go deep into the data management, they will be just part of the history. So one of the strong aspects that any GL professional should have is data management.
So again, maybe I would have one. I'm surprised that there are not mentioned curators. That's something that you can hear sometimes on some international conferences. The data curators who actually control the data and prepare them to be used by analytics. That's something I think it's quite missing. For example, even in repositories, it's not like we expect the data will be nice already when they are created.
I find this more as a comment, which I agree with. It's not really a question. The data management area in general is still kind of fluid. They're still picking up from different areas. They go quite much into statistics, but you'll never hear anymore that we are talking statistics here. It's kind of passé. So we are talking about data curators, we are talking about data managers, data specialists, you name it. So I believe that this area is also in the process of being formed, getting its shapes and so on. Many of the universities, and we have some university professors who can kind of confirm that, are jumping on the wagon of, offering different courses in data something. And is this going to last? Probably yes. How long, no one knows. But definitely the data is such as, just like when we were talking about data, we were talking about information, we were talking about knowledge. God forbid, no one talks anymore about wisdom. We don't need that. We just go to the lowest denominator. I believe that this circle maybe one day will turn completely around and say, who cares about the data? We want some kind of intelligent things out of it. So we might start going back to philosophy and asking people to do different thinking and so on with this data. It's already mentioned there when I said, look at what are the requirements of the leaders, the new leaders? And you can see that it's not so much this, I would call it scientific approach to everything, to statistical, to analytics and so on, although we all need that. But there is a step further. It's also interesting to read some of the things that some of the big organizations are looking differently, and they're offering some of the courses to their employees in the areas like arts, social studies, literature, and so on. Why? Because there is always a bigger area than just, okay, fine, let's see, what is the trendy product nowadays and how to cover it.
You mentioned the big companies, but as you mentioned also the generation gap, I also always feel like there's a gap between commercial entities that are interested in this transformation, and then we have universities and non-commercial institutions. Do you have any good example?
I have an amazing example because the government institution and anything related to that, and I do come from that world. I spent 34 years working for the UN, so I can rightfully say so. When you're looking at any of those trends that I just mentioned, and knowledge management is an amazing one. By the time the industry itself stopped using knowledge managers as something new and knowledge management, the government institutions like UN, or intergovernmental ones, they jumped on that and said, okay, fine, let's go do knowledge management, although it was already kind of passé. So this is something that, is it really that bad? Maybe not, because sometimes the government institutions are kind of inert, and they do need a little bit of time to adapt to new things and so on. They do need stability because they cannot offer to change everything immediately, because we are talking thousands and thousands of employees. We are talking the impact on public daily life. So it is required to be, maybe it should be a little faster. But we also have another trend, that the international organizations and the government institutions love to hire consultants. And instead of really relying on people who are experts within the organization, what do? You bring Gartner Group, you bring any of the personal consultants who will tell you this is the best thing in the world, and without thinking too much about it, you jump into it and realize that, well, that's not really a solution for this part of industry. Although it's a smart thing, everything is okay. So we do have to look maybe sometimes, and that's where the generation gap comes, inside resources of those organizations, because sometimes you know much better what is to be done and how to do it when you're working with it than just bringing someone from the outside.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question or reaction on this topic? So thank you, Dobi. Thank you for all information, interesting numbers, and recommendation for us. Thank you.